rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. For I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is being conducted in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. The Verona Board of Education passed a resolution at its annual reorganization meeting held on January 8th, 2019. The meeting set forth a schedule of its regular meetings, which resolution was within 7 days of passage. The schedule was sent to the Verona City Road Times, the Star Ledger, the Herald News, the Township of Verona, and the Verona Education Association. Postings of this meeting setting forth the time, location, and agenda were posted in each of Verona's 6 schools, the board office, and town hall. This posting was also sent to the above newspapers, all STA presidents, and STA liaisons. The Verona Board of Education operates under consent agenda format. Any board member has a right to have an item pulled to be voted upon or discussed separately. Copies of tonight's agenda and resolution have been made available to the public present. Mr. Allworth?
Here.
Mr. Day?
Here.
Mrs. Briscoe? Here. Mr. Elliott?
Here.
Mrs. Fresky?
Here. So before we officially start, if there's any public comments on any agenda item, you can approach the podium, and if not, I'm going to just turn it over to Dr. Dionisio for the VPS retirement recognition.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening to the Board of Education. This is the time of year that it's in full swing before we start to wind it down. But we would be remiss if we did not recognize the special people in the Verona Public Schools who have contributed and had impacted the lives of so many children here in Verona. Tonight we are very fortunate to have a number of family members, 2 of our wonderful staff members who are retiring this year that we will be recognizing. We have our administrative staff, we have family, and we have wonderful teachers here who are our friends and colleagues. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over first to Dr. Lanzo, who will be speaking this evening in recognition of Ms. Marianne Force at FN Brown 4th grade.
Thank you. Where is she? Don't hide there in the back. I see you.
Yeah, I'm very shy.
I might have to move you up to the front row like you did in the class.
I know.
Preferential seating right over here by the teacher. It is with tremendous honor to acknowledge Mrs. Marianne Force. She has dedicated the last 43 years to the FN Brown community. She's had the unique experience of teaching in the same classroom for the last 43 years. Talk about a home away from home. That classroom is truly her home.
Nate is going to be great.
She told me she's going to engrave her name on the wooden door if she leaves. Works for us. Yep. She began her career at FN Brown in 1973, hired by Principal Bob Boyanji, when the Verona Elementary Schools were K-5 buildings. She worked with 3 principals, Mr. Boyanji, Mr. West, and in August it would be our 18th year working together, Mrs. Force and I. Although Mrs. Force taught all subjects to 3rd grade and 5th grade reading for a few years, the majority of her tenure at FN Brown has been in 4th grade. She's known as the FN Brown 4th grade teacher. We all associate 4th grade with Mrs. Force. Mrs. Force, who is also known over the years to many students as Mrs. Russin, taught over 1,000 students. We calculated that, right, Mrs. Force? We rounded it. A little over. And in many instances, their parents too, which is absolutely incredible. Amazing. And I would always enjoy stopping by her classroom at back to school night, where she would tell parents where they sat when they were in her 4th grade classroom. And I would say to her, "Oh my God, you have such an incredible memory." And then she would whisper to me, she's like, "Actually, I don't know where they sat." She said, "But they believe that." And they would resort to like 4th grade behavior. "Okay, Mrs. Russell, Mrs. Force." And they would run back to their seat and have their hands folded waiting for her back to school night presentation. So it was very, very common over the years to have many visitors to FN Brown. People of all ages, from middle schoolers to high schoolers to people in their 30s and 40s that would come back and visit Mrs. Force. And they would stop by the office and to visit with her. Mrs. Force has always had the ability to connect with all students. She's always made children feel their best, building up their self-esteem and self-worth, and that's what she's been known for over the years. She makes everyone, from the students to the parents to the staff, feel like $1 million. And I know when I need a self-esteem boost, she's the go-to person. I always feel boosted up after speaking to her. Mrs. Force is truly the heart and soul of FM Brown, and I don't say that lightly. I mean that from my heart, from the bottom of my FM Brown heart, like we always say. We're known as the FM Brown Bees, Mrs. Force being known as the queen bee among the staff. And remember, Mrs. Force, there's only one queen in the hive, and it's been you. Thank you for your countless contributions to the FM Brown community and your dedication to the Verona community. On a personal note, I'll miss our daily after-school chats for us, about an hour. Where were you? Talking to Dr. Lanza, it's getting dark. Our chat, I need to find a chat. You'll be greatly missed at FM Brown, Mrs. Force. Congratulations, and of course, best wishes on your retirement. So if you can come up so I can hand the gift to you.
And Dr. Lanza was adorable because he said, "Are you still going to be my friend?"
There's only one queen bee.
Honestly, I don't think Dr. Lanza has enough friends. Really. I've been out with him, trust me. But first of all, I think I've always come to school really full of excitement because I love it so much. And I hope that I made a difference in my children's lives that I've taught. I think that's important. And I wrote this down. I was online and I found quotes.
Not a magazine?
Kevin, no, that's usually, I'll do that for tomorrow's board meeting. I have to figure out something on that too. But I wrote this, I took this down. It said, "A good teacher can inspire hope, ignite their imagination, and instill love learning." So I hope you did that. Because he's my teaching partner and my husband's fine with him being my school husband. And he's always good at that. And my husband Kevin, who is really has been, listening to me forever.
I can't always be blamed for school delays. Sometimes it's
Actually,
him.
on Fridays it's low.
It's him. I get Monday through Thursday.
He does Monday.
Always comes home.
Thank you. I want to
Mrs. Forrest, I'm just gonna add a little something. So I
I thought you
never,
were gonna ask me
no,
something.
no, no, I've never met you before,
No.
and my children haven't had you, I was in the Forest District.
Oh,
But just watching this interaction and
Yeah.
seeing everybody's face, I am positive, made such an impact in
Thank
Verona. So it seems like it's a pretty big loss for us, but congratulations
Thank
and
you. Thank
good
you.
luck
That's
on your
very
next
nice.
steps.
Thank you. And I'll just, everybody, I'm a mess. I'm a mess.
So I am going to be speaking on behalf of Mrs. Studo for Stanley Bozeman tonight. Mrs. Studo unfortunately had another engagement. She's spoken with Mr. Bozeman. I know there was a recent celebration celebrating Stanley's retirement. And I asked Mrs. Studo to put something together for me to be able to speak tonight. And I'd like to read it to everyone this evening. Stanley Bozeman has served as the custodian of Brookdale Avenue School for 22 years. Prior to coming to Verona, Stan was a custodian in Fairfield, New Jersey for 8 years. So we are celebrating Stan's hard work and dedication to school for 30 years. On behalf of the staff members, parents, and students at Brookdale, I would like to thank Stanley for his dedication and pride he has taken in the building. Many staff members and retired colleagues gathered a few weeks ago to celebrate Stanley's career. And a common message that everyone shared about Stanley was his genuine care for Brookdale, the support of his coworkers, and positive relationships that he formed with our students. Our students and parents at Brookdale celebrated Stanley's career this past Friday, and it was a lovely tribute to a successful one. The students shared songs, poems, and words of wisdom for their beloved custodian. The connection that the students feel to Stanley and the important role he plays in their educational journey is truly special. Students at Brookdale love walking down the hallway and getting their daily fist pump from Stan. And many Brookdale alumni come back just to visit him. I enjoy the fist pump too. Students at Brookdale know that Stanley does much more than clean our building. And I, Mrs. Studo, looked up synonyms for the word custodian to better define Stanley's role in our school for them. Synonyms for custodian are keeper, overseer, protector, and guardian. Stanley is the keeper of our building. Opening and closing our school each day, Stanley ensures that everything is up and running, as well as creating a clean and welcoming environment for all of us. Stan is an overseer at Brookdale. He knows more about our building than any one of us, myself included. Stan is a protector. He helps us all keep safe at school throughout the day. And lastly, Stan is a guardian at Brookdale. Stan truly cares about each and every individual who enters into our building. Greeting all of us with a smile and a fist bump is something that our students will remember throughout their lives. I did some math to figure out how many fist bumps Stanley has really given out throughout his 22 years at Brookdale. So it goes something like this. 22 years, 180 school days each year, times about 125 students, equals a total of about 500,000 fist bumps.
That's a low estimate.
Stanley, your presence is going to be greatly missed at Brookdale. You've been a staple within our school for many years, and I know that your spirit and attitude will live in the school and our community for many years. I wish you all the best for health and happiness in your retirement. I hope that together with your family and friends, you enjoy the rest and relaxation that you truly deserve. Congratulations. And I could say that in my starting my 6th year here, getting to know Stanley on a personal level, not only do you make the children feel welcome, but you make the parents feel welcome. You make visitors feel welcome, you make the staff feel welcome. So we can't thank you enough for helping create that positive culture in the building, because that's what it's all about. Thank you very much. And Ms. Force is not going to get off the hook that easily. I have to say a few words. A few. Don't worry, it's not bad, Mary. For the first time in 5 years, I'm actually seeing you get nervous. I'm talking about it.
I know, right?
So when I came here 5 years ago, Mrs. Force, we all know Mrs. Force, and she's so easy to talk to. She is so open and caring and loving with her students, with her staff, and she helps cultivate that positive culture. We will deeply be missed. I'll never forget that you were the first person to call me the Super Nintendo instead of the superintendent, because years ago, that's what the kids would call. That's right, that's right. So I just wanted to thank you for all of your years of service. My only regret is that I knew you longer. I know that you've made such an incredible impact on FN Brown and all of Verona. I know you're not going to be a stranger, and you're always welcome to come back.
Really?
And we'll see you soon. Always.
Not like Dan from the
Always.
building?
Always.
They said a certain amount of time, you can't come back.
It's 180 days. That's it. Statutory limit.
I was gonna ask you.
Then you can do the bulletin board.
Then I can do everybody's rules.
So really, thank you for everything.
Thank you.
And always know that you're going to have many, many friends here, and they're
Yep,
naturally
they
all here
are.
to support you.
Yep.
So congratulations again to both Mrs. Force and Mr. Bozeman tonight. If we could get a picture over here, both Stanley and Mary Ann, family and staff, if you'd like to join the picture, that would be fantastic as well. Feel free to come on in.
Yes.
Administrators, if you'd like to get in the picture, that'd be great too.
No, that's a mayor.
Of course, you can do it. Supposed to get a chair.
Stanley's supposed to our curriculum instruction and assessment update, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Miller, who's our director of curriculum, and we'll go from there. I'm going to cover that.
Thank you very much. Good? That's better. Thank you. All right. We're on now. We're ready to go. It is go time. Okay, so good evening. Welcome everyone, board and folks in the audience. We have a small presentation for you tonight to talk to you about kind of like the year and then maybe some ideas for next year. I know you're on the edge of your seat. Let's begin.
Better entertain us.
Trying.
Mr. Shells is the song and dance.
Hey, yeah.
All right, fair enough.
And Mr. Morello can sing, so we need to burst out in song. All right? Even in our opera courses, he sometimes. Okay. It is. So we always start with our mission statement. In partnership with the supportive community, we inspire our students to be creative, critical thinkers, compassionate global citizens through dynamic teaching, meaningful curricula, and enriching experiences. Just briefly, we've been living with our strategic plan for 1 year, and things we've addressed and that we've done a very good job with, and we continue to do a great job is with our budget to meet the needs of our learners. We are very efficient, and we find if there's a way we can find it work for our students and our teachers, we make it work. Again, thanks to Dr. Lanzo and team at the elementary as well as the high school and the middle school with PBSIS. We've been working on social emotional learning and support. Option 2 policy has been working wonderfully here at the high school. We have students that take classes online. We have students that opt out, for example, physical education to do things beyond the classroom. We also have, and I like to say this, I was talking to Ms. Salisbury today, our senior capstone experience. When I got here 6 years ago, it didn't exist. We work with Montclair Public Schools our first year. So year 2, we had 10 students. This year, we had over 140 students that were out and about in New Jersey and also in New York City. So it's an amazing experience for 1 month, from about May 15th till now, of students experiencing what it's like in the real world. So I was talking to Salisbury for about a half hour today. I know she was Dr. T in UCL before me, and nothing but a smile like this big. It's just incredible, the experience. She gets to go and drop in all these students, and they really are doing what they're saying, which is really cool, because they could not speak. Not doing it, but they really are, so we're so proud of our students. Continually working on improving our curriculum this year, and we'll go over that in a little bit. We had a huge QSAC mandate, I'll talk about that briefly. And then providing current best practice professional development, we call it PD 2.0. We work with teachers, but we've designed it now around the idea of lesson study. We empower teachers to work together with collaboration. They cooperate with one another, they reflect, and they gain confidence. That's really the key in developing our teachers into even better practitioners. And then we continue to, again, when I started here, we didn't have a Chromebook. We had a few computers. Now we have 1,200, 1,300 plus. Mr. Blanche, how many do we have now, Chromebooks?
Close to 2,000.
How many?
Close to 2,000.
Close to 2,000. So 2,000 Chromebooks. Google Apps for education, and this year we worked with 3 schools. We're waiting to hear back with Brookdale, HBW, and VHS on Future Ready Schools. So we're excited as we move forward. Our evaluation update. Quickly, we've completed over 700 formal observations, so we've been very busy, especially in May, with working on our formal observations and finals. The average district score is 3.34. The effective range, again, is from 2.65 up to 3.49, so our teachers are near the positive side, almost highly effective. As an average, our walkthrough observations, we've been visiting on a regular basis. We've recorded, and I emphasize recorded, over 650. We try to make our application, our app, very accessible, but folks visit classrooms a lot and they still don't record. So I'd say we had well over 1,000 visits this year. And our feedback continues to be positive, supportive, and constructive. The more we work with our teachers, the more expect us to be in the classroom, the more learning that takes place for our students. Our QSAC curriculum update, I'm using an example from elementary, from our elementary librarians about the things that we updated. So Ms. Walker, how you doing? She's in the audience. I'll highlight some of her work. So here's an example from Unit 2, so library media. What we did is we took a look at our established area goals and we went with the new standards, the AASL standards, which are updated, and it's like a 3D matrix. It's pretty cool on a curriculum level. Agreed?
Yes, very.
Take some time. And then what we did next, and these are QSAC mandates, we looked for our interdisciplinary standards. So what are we doing with the reading and writing, even speaking and listening, so that's down the lower part of the screen. Then what we did is we took a look at technology. The state has 2 standards. They have 8.1 and 8.2. 8.1 is educational technology. 2 is technology education, so kind of written backwards. But we also added the ISTE standards, which was nice because those are accepted across the country. We're hoping that the state eventually moves to the ISTE standards. So we went above and beyond. Our 21st century skills integration, we are in the 21st century, 19 years in. So what are career-ready practices that we thought we would use in this unit, and there are three. Act as a responsible and contributing citizen and employee, communicate clearly and effectively with reason, and use technology to enhance productivity. Then we looked at reference materials. So what the state is asking us is to put reference materials within each unit. So we added those, as well as accommodations and modifications. What do we do with students who maybe need a little more assistance? What do we do with students who actually we do have some ELL, second language learners in our districts. What do we do with, how do we modify learning for those students? And what do we do for students that are identified as gifted? How do we enrich? So we've done this for every unit. And speaking for the team, as well as the principals and teachers, we probably spent easily 1,000 hours or more this year revising our documents. So I'd like to thank the state. We needed a workout. So next, our results this year too, we spoke about this in January, but a few things of what we've done as a school district. In New Jersey Month, we were ranked 24, and it's a proud accomplishment for us. We've worked very hard from grades K, and actually pre-K, all the way through grade 12 to earn this honor. We were ranked number 2 by College Board. We earned the AP District Honor Roll again. This is the 9th annual. And we were also ranked number 2 among conventional public high schools, ranked 7th overall in New Jersey for the J. Matthews Top 100 Most Challenging High Schools in New Jersey. Some of the schools that outrank us are schools that are either charter or schools that are not traditional public like we are. So I will, without further ado, I'd like to call Ms. Denizio.
Hi, everybody. So before I start, I just want to say a couple things. Because this is a curriculum update, special ed really doesn't have their own curriculum. So I don't want anybody to mistake my brevity with not things happening in special ed, because we are certainly busy. But we really kind of fold into what Mr. Shells does and what Mr. Stevens does. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that are happening at the end of the year for special ed. So one of the first things that has happened is we just graduated our second cohort of Wharton Gillingham teachers. This is, of course, our second group. The first group went the first 2 years, and we just finished our second 2 years. This group contains 6 teachers as part of the cohort, and I just put their names up there, and I want to recognize them quickly. Miss Julia Albertson, Miss Kelly Canallen, Mrs. Diane Convoy, Mrs. Pam Bantha, Mrs. Dara Bate, and Miss Emma Franks. And just to say a quick thing about them, this is a very rigorous program. The teachers have to put together lesson plans. They tutor 2 students each week. They're evaluated, they're observed, they're critiqued, they submit lesson plans, there's assessments. So it really is a very long journey. We were very excited when it was over. Dr. Dinisto and I went and celebrated with them with a cake. And there were big smiles that evening. They're happy that it's over. So congratulations to all of them. Preschool updates. Never underestimate my preschool. I have 3 amazing teachers in the preschool who work very hard. I went to them this year and I said, listen, we've created our student growth objectives years ago, and our New Jersey teaching preschool and learning standards have been updated. Why don't we take a look at our SGO? And when I took the moment to show them that we were really kind of missing a lot of key standards, they were like, let's get to work. So they're really excited about taking on this endeavor of rewriting our student growth objectives. You think it's just preschool, but it's a really critical time developmentally. So we were trying to increase the number of New Jersey preschool teaching and learning standards that we're addressing. We do a math growth objective and a language arts growth objective. They're also in the process of revising the report card over the summer, and that's going to be closely aligned to the growth objectives because all of those key skills should be on the report card. So they're really excited about doing that. And we have really 2 goals with this whole kind of initiative happening in the preschool. Excuse me. One is to align it to many of the learning expectations on the SGO. And then the report card we also want to put into Genesis so it can be accessed online. Every other grade level has a report card online. We don't do that in preschool, so we're hoping to add that in as well. So good stuff happening in preschool. Let's see. So just quick things that we're focusing on for 2019, 2020. Our LLD program, which is our self-contained classrooms, we're really looking at how we're utilizing the science curriculum there. And we're trying to create a more multidisciplinary model with English language arts. So we're trying to really infuse more level text in there, because in an LLD classroom, it's really all about language. So we really want to give them more, without the kids knowing it, a real language immersion, even though they're learning about science topics. So I'm working on that with the ladies in LLD. We are implementing the new third grade math curriculum in the LLD classrooms and the resource classrooms. Mr. Stevenson will talk about that in a minute. ELA up here in the high school for the resource center. I sat with two of the gals, Ms. Verona and Ms. Vanderbalk, who are our teachers up here, and we're trying to do a reading and writing articulation, making sure that we're really hitting on the different writing genres. I think the ladies tend to go to the books that they like, and we want to make sure that, you know, they like it. Are we just doing expository writing? Are we really hitting argumentative and narrative? So we're really looking at that closely, making sure we're giving the kids a full experience from grades 9 through 12. And then we just, as Charlie mentioned, we did the QSAC update for our curriculum math, but we also kind of revised it. We were trying to realign our units of study. We tend to combine levels 2 and 3 in one classroom. So we want the units to be parallel. So unit 1 is all on budgeting, so it doesn't matter what level you're in. We can make it a little higher for those kids. So we kind of make sure that everything was articulated through consumer math. So that's kind of the big things. I think that's everything for us. Yep, and I think I'm turning it over to Mr. Shell. Is this you? Okay, sure.
Is there going to be another cohort for the Orton Gillingham?
Great question. As I look at Dr. Dionisio, yeah, do you want to come and add to that?
So we can't leave that one hanging out there. Mrs.
Yeah.
Dionisio is looking at me like, should I say it? Should I not say it? So Mrs. Dionisio and I and Mr. Miller, Mr. Shells, and some teachers, we've already begun the conversations around what does this look like next, now that we have 14 teachers trained and certified in Orton Gillingham. So for next year, which would have naturally been another cohort, but for the size of our district, we wanted to pump the brakes, take a look, reassess, and see how can we leverage the skills that they've developed and the resources that we now have with 14 teachers, and examining with some experts in the field, with partnering with Fairleigh Dickinson University, who is the program where we have this partnership with, as well as the professor, who's a local superintendent, and tapping into her expertise. So we want to look at next year as an exploratory year of resetting ourselves and what does this look like moving forward. So we're not going to be doing a new program. We want to see what other things we could do now that we have this talent on our set.
So the 14 teachers that we have currently trained, are they spread out throughout the 6 schools, or is it just elementary, or just elementary?
It's 5 buildings, 4 elementary, and then there's 2 at HEW. Yeah.
Because it is more of a typical early level reading intervention program, multi-sensory.
And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Shells, the Director of Humanities. Thanks.
Oh, sorry. Supervisor. What is you?
Move up in the world.
It's on record. It's on record.
Good evening, board members. Good evening, Dr. Dionisio, colleagues. It's nice to be back here and be able to speak with you. And my goal tonight is to build a bridge between where we were when I last spoke with you, I guess in January, and share some highlights from our staff and students in the land of humanities throughout the winter and spring, right down to the present. I also hope to link some of those initiatives that I spoke to you about in January with future goals. So where we've been and where we want to go. And where I'd like to start is really with English and social studies. One of my goals back in February, when I led a cohort of teachers to Ridgewood High School, was to look for entry points where we might expand and increase interdisciplinary learning opportunities, not just between ELA, and social studies, but seeing as they both are within the humanities, I figured that would be a nice place to start. And there are many different ways to do that. I had presented back in January that there are really multiple models or frameworks in which that can be done. Well, I just want to let you know that we went to Ridgewood and we had a really lovely day. It was a half-day workshop. There are some of our teachers busy collaborating and hard at work. And we got some really good ideas. And we heard from practitioners in that district and elsewhere, as well as some supervisors and the Ridgewood High School principal. And we got some good ideas to build off of for going into next year. So we recently had, as is customary, end of the year, teachers began their work on an annual professional development plan, or called the PDP. And while this was not mandatory, because I want choice to exist in the work of educators and the work of adults, I have several, I dare say many, teachers who have voluntarily picked as a goal for next year expanding the interdisciplinary work that they do. Now, that is not to say that it's not already going on. You will find humanities-based instruction and interdisciplinary collaborations across the departments. We're looking for new and interesting and exciting ways to do that. For instance, and then I'll move on, I've had already, and kudos to them, because it's more like feed them when they're hungry and just point them in the right direction, of their own volition and of their own accord. 7th grade English teachers, when they read The Outsiders, would like to next year take a look at some of the psychological themes surrounding some of the characters in that novel, and in doing so, work with Ms. Schramm's AP Psych students at the high school in some capacity. That's a pretty advanced level of interdisciplinary work because you're spanning buildings, you're spanning grade levels, and you're spanning disciplines. And they ask, can we make that some of the work we do next year in department meetings or time permitting when we have, which is so very nice to have, several early dismissal and service days. And I believe absolutely, to get great things done, time is always an issue, and common planning time is always a commodity. So I endorse that and ratify that work and that objective. And I don't mean to editorialize, but I do want to just let you know where I'm coming from. We get bombarded, I think, in public education every month, every year, with silver bullets or magic bullets and the panacea on how to improve schools from the outside. Testing will do that, new evaluation systems will do that, etc., etc. I am a firm believer, and probably always will be, that the single greatest way to improve schools from within is right here. Teachers working together as a community of learners to improve their practice and improve student learning. So it's great to see. Piggybacking off of that, I had mentioned also in February, we had a very nice opportunity. We were visited by a professor emeritus at Rutgers University, pretty well-known scholar, a very accomplished researcher and an accomplished author. I'm not suggesting this is the only form of PD. I'm not even suggesting this is the best form of PD. I don't believe that it is, but I still think it is pretty neat from time to time to kind of learn at the feet of an expert and a guest speaker. And he gave us that opportunity. And, you know, I would kind of treat his book as a mentor text for some of that interdisciplinary work that we hope to do. Because once again, he married in this book the historical narrative, he took on that part, but a former student of his who had an uncle tragically die in Vietnam, but he wrote home like 80 letters from the war. Those letters are really, really rich wartime literature. And copies of this book were handed out to staff. And again, this was another impetus, I think, for some teachers wanting to look next year, in fact, at this specific topic. Boy, I teach Vietnam in history. I teach Vietnam literature and English. I'd really like to work to align when we teach the two, so students we have in common will be going from learning the historical context of it to looking at some poems or songs or letters in the English classes. And that was Michael Addis at H.B. Whitehorn School, working with ELA and Social Studies grades 5 to 12 back in February. The other goal that I continue to have, and regrettably, I don't know what I did wrong, I apologize, this won't play, I wish it did, it's only about 2 minutes long. you had a very good suggestion. I can link this to my professional Twitter feed. It's just a YouTube video that shows kind of a new and a best practice way to teach history, but I'll sum it up as follows. I'm trying to support an objective whereby if you could all think back to how you learned social studies and history in your schooling experience, if it was like mine, far too often you covered facts. And really what more sophisticated teaching and learning of the discipline of history is not to cover a single agreed upon narrative or set of facts, but rather uncover competing interpretations about the meaning of a person or an event. And that's really what promotes the higher order thinking. It's really what historians do, to be blunt and to be frank. They don't memorize facts and bubble in scantrons and solely read textbooks. And this is just one program, it's not the only one, that supports an inquiry-based approach where students wrestle. They start with good questions that don't have one single answer, open questions that are open to argument and debate and different opinions and interpretations. And then they get their hands dirty with documents. They do what historians would do, even if it's in an amateurish way and in a way that they're still building their own capacity. They wrestle with documentary evidence to build their own conclusions and their own theses based on that evidence. This comes out of Stanford University. I think it's a wonderful resource. It's completely free. They've done a tremendous service to social studies educators. They literally have written well over 100 lesson plans for world and U.S. history, put them all on their website, and you just got to establish an account. It's one of the few things I can think of that's excellent and hasn't become a paid-for service in education. And the program out of Stanford is called Read Like a Historian. So this also really helps to support literacy initiatives in ELA, because students read a lot of documents and not just their textbook in history class. And they learn to read and think as historians do. I want to close out social studies, and this is very recent. I was very happy to attend this and very excited about where we might go with this. We took 5 teachers, had kindergarten covered, had grades 3, 4, and 6. K, 3, 4, 6, Dr. Lanzo and myself. This was a joint venture between Kearney and Jefferson Township in Morris County. Their supervisors put it together. And it was held at an elementary school just on May 30th, I believe, in Jefferson, and I was fortunate to go. And it can be very difficult in my experience to find quality professional development for elementary teachers for social studies. Maybe not so much for ELA, maybe not so much for math, the tested subjects. It can be sometimes for social studies. This was a wonderful day. And all it was, a social studies roundtable, was elementary educators and their supervisors meeting in their learning commons, their library, and sharing best practice strategies. And again, if you can get some of this work to get a foothold at the elementary level, student-led discussions known as Socratic seminars, document-based question work known as DBQs, starting not 8th grade, 4th grade, perhaps younger. History labs, very neat concept. Why can't we do what our science colleagues do in science? They learn through inquiry every time they conduct a lab. And they go through the scientific method. Why can we not think about that reading like a historian program that I just shared with you? There's a question. We might have a hypothesis. I now get my hands dirty with that evidence, and I go back, do I revise that hypothesis? Does it confirm what I thought? So the notion of a history lab is setting up a kind of an investigative, inquiry-based, it doesn't even have to be a project, activity in class where students, they do the heavy lifting of thinking, rather than just passively sitting and taking notes or recording the thinking of their teacher. And, a little bit of a novelty, but I could still see the fun in it and the excitement in it, and that's the use of the cardboard boxes and your smartphone to use Google Expeditions to take virtual field trips virtually anywhere. So if you were doing a lesson, top of my head, on Gettysburg while studying the Civil War, but I couldn't get to Gettysburg, Google Expeditions would allow you to, you could come up with an activity or an assignment and link it to everything you could see about that battlefield through those viewfinder, through the cardboard box, through the viewfinder, and using the app on the phone. Pretty neat. So all of that took place in Jefferson, and I was so happy that we had a 4th grade teacher the very next day do a Socratic seminar over at Forest. And another teacher, actually all of these teachers, said, I'm going to turnkey this at our grade level meeting. And so we're looking to, pilot and hopefully get some of this work going, especially the document work. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day. I'm not saying all of this has to happen next year. In fact, I fear that. I think that we can drown in too many initiatives sometimes. So, but the point is, if a 4th grader can look at a document from history, it doesn't have to be 8, might be 1, and start developing some very good critical reading and thinking skills in the 4th grade, they're setting themselves up for big time success when they do more of that work in middle school and high school. And that's what we're going to seek to do. We're going to seek to get the resources and the training and the support, if necessary, and break away from worksheets and textbooks. They have their place. I'm not saying we have to ban them, but I think this is a classic example of kids will rise to the expectations that we set for them. And for as long as we continue to say they can't read a portion of a primary source document, I believe we have low expectations for them. I love this organization. We had a grant that was awarded to teachers in this building who worked together to apply for it. One of the benefits of that grant is we had a free 2-hour professional development session right here in this room on one of our in-service days. Fantastic workshop on media literacy in a day and age where so many of us can have our heads spinning with what's truth and what's fiction and what's fact and what's myth and what's a reliable journalism source or media source. And this is an organization that I hope that we can continue to partner with. They just do a very good job with both pedagogy, introducing our teachers to new methods and strategies, and they do a very excellent job with helping us to continue to combat bigotry, intolerance, unkindness towards others in the curriculum and in life. That's just a picture of Gabby Hernandez. She's our Facing History consultant. She came in from New York City, and once again, this was a hybrid or a joint 5 through 12 ELA and social studies PD session. And listen, I should comment here, you do have to be careful of these days, because the days are nice, but then you look to see, well, are you implementing that which you learned from the workshop? And I can honestly say I see the techniques that Facing History has taught us, and they predate my short tenure here. Facing History has been working with humanities here, probably for the past couple of years. And, that's when you know it sticks, and that's when you know it is taking root and beginning to transform practice, when you do walkthroughs or you talk to teachers, and they are excited to share with you, hey, I tried something new, I just tried something I learned in that workshop. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out, I do have to watch my time here, but I'm struck by, it seems like every week there's a new study. It concerns me as a dad, it concerns me as an educator. There's a new study that seems to indicate a strong correlation and a connection between use of smartphones and social media, especially how our young people use their smartphones and social media and their overall wellness and their mental health. CBS News just reported within the last week a new study that posits exactly that. There is a strong correlation between the two. I was at Teachers College today, and a very prominent researcher happened to mention this. And she said, when we were kids, I don't know if you had this experience, I did, you got through it, right? you lived through it at the time. You look back on it and you say, that wasn't all that nice. You know, when we were kids in gym class and on the athletic field, when you split up into teams, I don't know if you had a common experience. I can remember like it was yesterday. Typically, two popular kids were called upon by the teacher, and they were often very good at sports also, and they picked the teams. And then, you know, you can have shells. You know, there's always that kid or a few kids, right, that were left. Well, but the person's point, and this really resonated with me. The person's point at Columbia today was that goes on all day, every day. When you're not followed, you're unfollowed, you're blocked. I like this, but I dislike that. How many friends do you have? It's just change, but it's a similar concept. And I guess that's my segue into. I thought this was incredibly timely, incredibly necessary, proactive, ahead of the curve in many ways. And we had Kate Fagan, the author of What Made Maddie Run, come here in April. And she delivered two very powerful assemblies, one during the day to the student body, one in the evening to community members and any interested parties who wanted to attend. And we also had Maddie's father in the audience. And I think that this was a great initiative and one that we need to continue to monitor and have our finger on the pulse of. Also in April, I wanted to add in and share with you, we really had a wonderful opportunity. We took a small group of students, and trust me, the staff members and myself included were as ecstatic and just such a lovely night. We had an opportunity to get live on the set of Anderson Cooper 360. And I want to be clear, this was not in any way, shape, or form any kind of partisan event. This was more an event to see how a political journalism show is produced. From booking guests to engineering it and the sound and the control room and questioning techniques of guests and you name it, the camera people. And we took broadcast journalism students and AP Gov kids. And I really think that they had, beyond the photo op here, a real memorable learning experience, a really unique learning experience. You know, this is, you talk about co-curricular learning experiences, something beyond the traditional curriculum. How can you learn out in the field? How can you learn away from the classroom? And while it was only a few hours, I think this was that kind of an experience. And so happy to report, we have an offer to do this every year. We have an offer to keep coming back. They are not averse to accepting school groups. They like to keep them small, preferably under 20. But we could potentially do this if we have the will and the interest, each year. And I think that would be a tremendous benefit to future students.
How did that come about? Did somebody have a connection or? Steve?
I actually have the connection. No, it's a fair question. No, it's a fair question. It does not just grow on trees. Opportunity like this would just happen. So it's a bit of a long story. It's a funny story, but let me not share it and just say a former student of mine from really a long time ago, from way back in the day, works for him, works very closely with him. And I maintained that contact, and she offered it to our school. I want to touch upon world languages and our big initiative and goal for next year. And once again, if I could compare it to your own schooling. And if you can just think in your mind's eye, and again, maybe you didn't have a similar experience. I know my parents had this experience in the 1960s, and I know what my experience was in the 1980s. And that was, you went to a world language class, and you learned a world language through drill, 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 and more drill. Drill and kill. And worksheet after worksheet. And what was really privileged is, are you right? you have to be right and you have to be perfect in how you speak and your grammar and how you write. And that is no longer considered a best practice. So there's an old quote, do the best you can with what you know, but when you know more, do better. And I probably butchered that, but you get a rough paraphrase there. But when you know better, do better. And we do know better now. And so we're going to work next year. I think our teachers are going to love Joe. I think they're going to love Joe. Joe Goebel is the chair of the World Language Department at TCNJ. He still teaches Spanish. He is TCNJ's lead. He heads up teacher candidates, pre-service teaching candidates who want to be world language educators. And in addition to all of that, he is, in his own right, an accomplished scholar, researcher, and author. And we have 5 sessions booked with him for next year. And the theme, or the title of his sessions, is Teaching for Language Proficiency. How do we do it? We don't do it the way I just suggested. We do it through what is called comprehensible input, and an ample amount of comprehensible input. So it's no longer important that you have to be perfect. It is important that you can get the gist of what I'm saying. You build vocabulary every day, not in English, in the target language. And you understand more and more of what I say in the target language. It's comprehensible to you, and it's input because it is coming from me, your teacher, but all that input eventually will lead to your own output. And it's getting our learners to be communicative in the language and keeping 90% or more each day of the instruction in the target language. By the way, this does not say you can never do grammar and grammar doesn't matter. It's just grammar is embedded within the context of these communicative activities. So that's in a nutshell. I don't know if I explained that well. Joe would probably have a lot more to say on it. But that is what's considered 21st century best practice, and he's going to be working with our teachers on that. And then the goal is, here's the continuum, right? We build professionals teaching quality and their teaching capacity. And when that changes, it will necessitate curricular changes and assessment changes. Because if you're teaching differently, the curriculum should reflect that, and how we assess kids should reflect that as well. Oh, and we still plan on doing, this fell through, the site visit, because they were so booked. They had so many schools wanting to see them in action. West Morris Mendham is one of several model districts, according to Trenton, our New Jersey Department of Education, for the world languages. They also happen to be a department that was trained and worked very closely with Joe Goebel. So I think it'll fit hand in glove to take a small cohort, do that site visit, have a professional book study on a book from him, and work with him 5 sessions. I don't know why those bullet points didn't show up, but I think I can do it from memory. I wanted to share with you some student achievements. Madame Morgovich this year enrolled her students in a national French contest sponsored by the American Association of the Teachers of French called Le Grand Concours, which is the big contest. And it's a written exam that tests our French students in reading comprehension, listening comprehension, some grammar, and we had 2 gold award winners. You had to score 95th percentile to be gold. We had 1 silver and 8 bronze, and then 11 honorable mentions. And all of those had to be in a fairly high percentile. So silver was probably like 90th percentile to 85th percentile. Everybody above 50, right? You did better than 50% of everyone else in the country who took this test, at least got honorable mention. So we're very proud of them, and for her, for entering our students in this competition. I'm finishing up, I promise. I have three that I'm excited about, book study initiatives that I want to conduct next year. Close reading is a very important ELA skill. It probably was before the Common Core. It certainly got solidified as one with the Common Core, now the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, and actually it is part of a balanced literacy program And what we are doing in this district, reading, writing workshop being a component of balanced literacy. Anthony Fitzpatrick, I do happen to know him. He used to be the English coordinator at the state level. So he would go out from Trenton, again, to districts all around the state and conduct PD in ELA, in literacy, with teachers. He wound up missing public schools. He since has left Trenton, and he's a supervisor again in a school district in his own right. But he wrote a wonderful book, very good book, on close reading called Text Inspection on the Core. And this is a book, 5 to 12, any interested parties. Yeah, this isn't mandatory. These are things people do because this is something they believe in doing in getting better. And this will be a book we're working with in English next year to promote the history through inquiry. The book cover on the left, Why Won't You Just Tell Us the Answer? Very interesting title, and the genesis of that title is its own story that you might be interested in. But teaching historical thinking, not memorizing facts, historical thinking skills, middle into high school, will be our social studies professional reading. And this book right here by Bill Van Patten from Michigan State will be the book that goes with what Joe Goebel will be conducting in the world languages. And that's all.
Thanks for leaving me some time. Hi, everybody. Yes. Mr. Miller was whispering in my ear while I was sitting there. Breathe. So I'm very excited about math. Because math is awesome. So we're trying to do math very differently now than probably, and I'm echoing Mr. Shells a little bit, your experience in a math class, my experience in a math class. I was a child of the 70s. This was the era of Johnny Can't Add, right? And so everything was kill and drill, worksheets, speed. I remember time drills. And if you didn't stand up quick enough, you were sort of like publicly ridiculed. People developed the idea that like you're either good at math or you're bad at math. I see it come through in emails as I'm doing summative reports on teachers. You see it in parent emails to the math teachers. Like, I'm so proud of my son or daughter and their progress in math because we're not math people, right? We're just not a math family. And honestly, it doesn't really work that way. And part of the guiding philosophy is that everyone can understand and can do math, provided that you get the right support and instruction. Math is honestly a team sport. Typically, it's not played as a team sport. Typically, you're given, here's your problems, do them by yourself. Check in with me if you need it. Don't talk to your neighbors, right? We're going for that, like, fold your hands, behave, don't socialize, just do your work, right? No. And then math is far more than just applying procedures to solve problems. Math is finding patterns. Math is, having insights, being creative, modeling things with pictures. And then what we've learned is that math is best learned through creative experiences that force kids to make sense of the math. Our math trainer, who I'll talk about in a little bit, discussed what happens when kids are behind. And there's really kind of 3 domains of math knowledge. There's math concepts, math facts, and math procedures. And as soon as the kid's behind, we stop doing math concepts and we just drill facts and procedures. And by the time we see them in the high school, man, everything is all crazy mixed up and they don't understand what they're doing. So to give you a little history, we developed this through a lot of time. We put together a math curriculum review team back in the summer of 2016 and in the spring of 2016, and through 2016 and 17 we visited various schools. We watched a first grade math class spend an hour on really one problem and many different ways to solve that one problem. And the whole drive here was to change people's minds. Because as soon as you stand up here and say everybody can do math, and there's no such thing as a math person and not a math person, people get kind of bent out of shape because of their own experience that I described before. So all of this was about changing people's minds, and first and foremost, the teachers in our classrooms' minds. Because you look at your typical elementary school teacher, they probably didn't become an elementary school teacher to teach math, and because they loved math and they had the best experience in math ever. And so a lot of this was getting them to see math in a different way and see the delivering of math to kids in a different way. So we started with site visits. In year 2, 17-18, we started a process of lesson study and a book club. I'll dig into both of those a little bit more. And we continued that this year and grew the group, so more people involved. The math book club in 17-18 focused on mathematical mindsets. This is the whole idea that there is no such thing as a math person, except for the fact that maybe everybody could be a math person if it's done right. This year we looked at becoming the math teacher you wished you'd had, based on the same ideas, very practical. The teachers love this second book. I've got about 5 options that I need to read in July and August if anybody wants to join me and give me some 2 cents on which book. I think the leader right now in my mind is Smarter Than We Think by Kathy Seeley. She's the former president of the NCTM, National Council of Teachers of Math. She advocates what she calls upside down teaching, right? Math used to be I do, we do, you do. Teacher stands at the board, tells you how to do it, guides you through a few problems, and then you go do them by yourself, right? Lots and lots and lots of practice. Kathy Seeley talks about you do, we do, and I help you connect it all together. And so it's a whole different kind of thing. And so that would dovetail nicely with these other 2 books and kind of press forward. I found the Sousa book, the one on the left today, just today, and I'm intrigued because he works at Seton Hall. And so he's local. We might be able to get him here. Our whole goal is to create a situation where kids are solving problems to learn math instead of learning math to solve problems. And so you start with something they know, and you can kind of see in this picture, the pointer doesn't work. The same girls are working on 7 minus 2 and connecting it to 70 minus 20. At the point I observed this lesson, they had not worked with double digits or groups of 10. All they knew was 7 minus 2. And they're being asked to extend their understanding of 7 minus 2 into 70 minus 20. That's kind of a big deal for a first grader. And then they were asked to go present their model of how 70 minus 20 worked and how it was connected to 7 minus 2. And meanwhile, every group of pair of kids in the class had a different problem that was set up the same way. Amazing lesson. This is an example of the board at the end of a 3rd grade lesson looking at elapsed time. It progresses from the left to the right, from the most sort of concrete and representational to the most abstract. It's taking things like a number line, a straight line number line, and then turning it into a circle number line, because that's what analog clocks really are, is a circular number line. That's a huge shift for a 3rd grader, any kid. And then all the way on the right, we've got them applying the things that they've learned with numbers and symbolic representations. The little red stickers that you can see on each piece. At the end of the lesson, each kid got a sticker, and they were asked to go pick a method that was not theirs that they would try on the next set of problems. So we're stretching their idea from this is mine, this is the only way I know how to do it, to, oh wait, my neighbor had a cool idea, and I think I can show math the same way. This is a 4th grade lesson about fractions, right? The dreaded fractions. And yet kids were busy modeling fractions, and the same kind of thing. We go from very concrete representational models on the left to more abstract on the right, and getting kids to progress to what we would consider the standard algorithm. There is value in the standard algorithm. All those things that we learned through the I do, we do, you do, they work. They're fast. There's a reason why it's the standard algorithm. And we do want kids to get there. We're not abandoning that. We're just doing it differently. And what we found is when we broaden the playing field to include modeling with math, different kids rise to the top. We got interesting feedback in 6th and 7th grade. The kids that never participate in math class all of a sudden are at the board presenting their ideas in ways that they've never done before. And this was sort of mind-blowing for the teachers who experienced it. This is our trainer, Bill Jackson. He was recommended to us by Nicole Studo. We interviewed him, we did a couple phone interviews of some other people, and we picked Bill. There's something zen about Bill. He taught in Patterson for more than 25 years. He uses a technique called Japanese lesson study, which Charlie has been referring to as PD 2.0. It puts the teachers as students at the center of what they're doing. They develop lessons collaboratively. They deliver a lesson, as a singleton or a pair. They all observe. It's a little nerve-wracking for them at times because you'll have like 10 adults in a classroom watching you teach. You're only really ever used to having your supervisor, your principal watch you teach, and now all of a sudden there's like nearly a dozen adults. And then we kind of go back and dissect it and give feedback, and it's more about what the kids are doing than the teachers are doing. And so it's very collaborative, and you can see some of the feedback that they've given about Bill. I get informal feedback all the time that Bill is the best trainer we ever had. Fantastic. We asked the teachers what they felt the most important thing they learned from the process with Bill and going through lesson study. And you can kind of see a selection of things. I really kind of like the last bullet. Take a risk because the students will surprise you every time. Bill relates a story of when he was teaching and he was sort of challenged by his Japanese mentors to open his questions and trust his kids. His mentor was like, Bill, you talk too much. You tell them too much. You're too helpful. You don't trust your kids. And it's a mantra that we've kind of layered into be less helpful. Trust your kids. Let them do. And they surprise you. Right? We kind of count them out and say, well, I have to show you. Because my teacher showed me. And so this is really like cultural change. So now pressing forward. Over the past few years, we've reviewed a number of different series, Bridges in Mathematics, Dimensions Math, Eureka Math, Japan Math, Pearson's Envision 2.0, which is an advancement of the curriculum that's currently in place, Pearson Investigations, Primary Math, and Ready Math. The only one that really fit the bill was Dimensions Math. Dimensions Math delivers on the guiding philosophy. It has an anchor experience for each topic, so the kids have an experiential interaction with math in a different way. You give them a pile, this is an example from third grade, and building towards place value. A pile of somewhere between 300 and 400 popsicle sticks. And you ask them to start grouping them. And in the back of your head, you kind of want them to group with tens, right? And then after they build their group, you can assemble hundreds, and then you can take all the sticks in the whole class and put it together. And then you can get a representation of the kids in front of the class holding up 1,000 popsicle sticks. And so they have the experience of touching it, feeling it, holding it up, seeing their friends do it. And then hundreds and tens and ones. And so it's not just this abstract, here's 1,000. And we have this picture and a cube. They get to sort it, they get to bundle it, they get to touch it, they get to feel it. And then you work on this idea of place value afterward. The other key feature of Dimensions Math is that it has a very careful progression from concrete to pictorial to abstract. It builds on experience, it gets kids to draw that experience, it gets them to represent math not just with numbers, which are very abstract, but with pictures and physical objects. One of the things that's a little crazy about Americans, and I'll share a great New York Times article called Why Americans Stink at Math. I'll make sure you all get it in your email. We just kind of teach processes. And we'll give them manipulatives, and yet we teach the process with manipulatives, and it's still just a process. There's no sense making. And that's the last, and that's kind of the last point, is that all of this is about kids making sense of math. The curriculum framework for Dimensions Math has like 5 pieces to the house that include skills, concepts, processes, attitudes, and metacognition. If you looked at any of the other math series, they wouldn't include attitudes, they wouldn't include metacognition, and I'm not sure the concepts will be fully developed and delivered. All right, let's touch base on science. I believe Charlie shared this with you in January, and I apologize, I was suffering from the flu during that last presentation. I'm much better now. Back from, somewhere around 1800 through 1957, science was just content. Here's all the stuff you need to know, right? And the typical science lesson would go lecture, recitation homework, and then a lab that proves what I told you, right? 1957, everybody remembers what happens, right? Sputnik goes up, everybody freaks out, we're behind. And so there's a huge investment in science education in the United States, and they included process. And this is where the whole sort of myth of the scientific method came along. We'll have to talk later, you did mention it before. Science is much messier than that, the scientific method that was presented as a 7-step list. Some of it's still true, but it's far messier. Right about 1972, the money ran out. We got that malaise of the 70s, and everybody kind of fell back to what we always did. Let's just cover content. So the process wedge got real small. Right about 1996, the AAAS put out a publication called Science for All Americans, and a set of benchmarks that go with it. It was called Project 2061. It had started in 1985, which is the last time Halley's Comet was here. It's called Project 2061 because they want to achieve this goal by the next time Halley's Comet comes around. That might actually be ambitious, I'm not sure. Because, and again, all of this is cultural. You teach the way you were taught. The most profound experience all of our teachers have is being a student in the classroom that they were in when they were in school. And so we're trying to sort of change those mindsets again. 2016 and the present, the NGSS, whole different thing. Let's integrate ELA, let's integrate math. We've moved past the inquiry into science and engineering practices, and we've integrated what we call cross-cutting concepts. And so this is a dynamic shift in science. It's going to be a bit of a slow burn. The guiding philosophy is to introduce the phenomenon first. Don't go lecture, homework, lab. Give them a lab experience first. Let them play with the ideas and the concepts and make sense of it. It sounds kind of like math. It sounds kind of like history. It sounds kind of like ELA. We're all lining up in the same trajectory here. And then I've been talking about engaging students, not just in the vocabulary and grammar, and we're kind of looping in what Mr. Shell said about world language, but it's adding the culture of science. And it's everything in context as opposed to here's all your content and we need to cover. The NGSS, they've been rebranded as the NJSLS for science, have 3 dimensions. That's my next slide. We've always had content. What the NGSS did, and they've been rebranded as NJSLS Science. The science and engineering practices on the left, cross-cutting concepts on the right, and the idea is that if you're working in 3 dimensions, you've got a little bit of every of those happening at the same time. And the idea is that that's what's happening in your lessons, that's what's happening in your homework, that's what's happening in your assessments. It's hard to do. It's very hard to do. And so we're taking baby steps into this tool because it's a seismic shift in the way that teachers think. One example, I had an experience in the chemistry class, presenting periodic patterns and electron configurations. Everybody's favorite, right? Right? We love that. This lesson was unique because the kids understood how to do electron configurations, and they got a card at the door, they filled them out, they plotted them on the periodic table, and there's a lot blank. And then they worked at figuring out the pattern in the blanks. And they started to propose, well, I think this goes in that blank. Why do you think so? And they built the whole periodic table with all the electron configurations themselves, having been given a start, as opposed to, here's your worksheet, here's the lecture, very different thing. Another example, let's see if this will run. Mr. Balaj, where are you? So one of our sixth grade teachers took the kids out to the HB track and did an interaction with Newton's first law of motion, right? The idea that if you're at rest, you stay at rest, or if you're at motion, you stay in motion until there's an outside force. And the kids had to hold the tennis ball like they were Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? Very short arms, and run as fast as they could, and let go, and have the tennis ball fall in the bucket. Right, and the first time down the track, they were supposed to let go when they were right at the bucket. Well, guess what? The ball doesn't go in the bucket, right? So then they had another try, and they let it go beforehand, and so the kids are experiencing this idea of something stays in motion before they're ever taught, like Newton, first law, what? So, and this is that phenomenon first kind of idea. Touch on engineering really quickly. When I got here, our engineering classes were a lot more like just shop. Teacher would give the kids, here's the plans, here's the thing you're gonna make, go replicate it. The classic HBW was the hippo toy. Some of you may remember. You have 3 hippos, right? And there was a basketball hoop, right? And what was the other one? Was a duck, correct? Yeah. And then they did make a catapult, but that stayed in the classroom if I didn't come home. That came home too? Okay. But the kids were given plans and then they were asked to replicate. And almost the same at the high school as well. What we've done with the staff that we've hired in engineering is really blown that up. You know, kids are doing really interesting things and creating. One of the things that I'll highlight for HBW was Future City, and the girls who went to Future City and presented their idea of a sustainable city and renewable energy. You can see the windmills that they built, and it's all out of recycled materials, which is just a fantastic experience for them.
Is it coincidence that it's all girls? Should I not ask any questions?
It might be, it might not be. I think it's great that it's Ms. Zambrano, because we have a very intelligent, very filled with ingenuity type role model at HB. And so it could just be girls that jive with Ms. Zambrano. Or it could be that their frontal lobe develops a little quicker and they're a little more organized and a little more with it at that level. I'm not sure. Likewise at VHS, I'm not going to click it because I don't know if it works, but we won Pumpkin Chunkin' at Rowan. That was a girls' team as well. The first year they won nothing. Their pumpkin really didn't go anywhere. They redesigned and came back and they won. They beat college teams. All kind of fantastic. And then what Mr. Atkins does in the introductory STEM class is have the kids go through design and optimization of their CO2 racers. One of the capstone projects last year was to build a wind tunnel so they can look at frontal drag. They put their dragsters in the wind tunnel that a kid built that got a VP grant to do it. And they look at how they can optimize the design so that the car goes faster. And then he routes it to the real world, so they compared their particular car to a Vespa, a Porsche 911, a Bugatti, or a top fuel dragster based on how quickly it accelerated through the STEM lab. What's hysterical, honestly, is Mr. Atkins got a new desk over the summer, and when I saw him in September, I'm like, you're gonna have to cut a hole in your desk to run your races. And then when he did the races, there's a hole in his desk, right? So the cars go right under his desk and through the door into the shop. It's fantastic. Any questions?
One of the things I had asked you, Glenn, in the past is that, we talked about learning in the 70s and 80s, and with math, how do these parents help their kids at home? Because math is so much different than how we learned it.
Excellent question. So the pilot that we're going to do next year is going to focus on third grade, and we picked third grade for a lot of reasons. We will plan third grade math night, or maybe I'll show up to back to school for all the different third grade teachers to have a presence and field some of those questions. I've actually, I'm planning on putting either a Verona magazine article that's like, I don't understand my kids' math, what do I do? To get it out there, but that would be the main message.
Because high school's like a foregone conclusion, right? It's trig, it's algebra, you get a
Well,
tutor, but on the
Yeah,
middle school level.
but the feedback that I get is that there's tutors all the way along, and there's a whole lot of math nervousness, of my kid's gonna fall behind in math. And, some of my responses, I'm not sure what the rush is, right? And if all you do is facts and procedures, they're not really gonna get ahead, and they're not really gonna be able to think in that. And so we've spent years changing our teachers' minds, and we've kind of grown that group, and the next stage is changing our parents' minds. And as I go to the classroom, the kids were easy, right? Like, they're excited to do math this different way, and kids who don't always find success are finding success, so that part's easy. But the next phase is sort of some heavy public outreach. Here's how I support my kid in math, and you could probably do it just by asking questions. Show me your thinking. Show me how you did that. Can you do that in a different way? How is your new way connected to your old way? We don't have to show our kids algorithms. We don't have to show our kids procedures for them to be okay in math. We don't, right? That's what was done to us. And wasn't always successful, right? So we'll work on a PR tour and change some minds, but maybe it starts with, hi everybody, listening to this and thinking about it differently.
I have a real quick question.
Go ahead.
I think I've asked you this before. There's like a movement of physics first,
Mhm.
because a lot of kids don't even get to physics. So in looking at math and science in this more hands-on thinking, critical approach, would it make sense to put physics down, or is that like really negatively impacting like your sequence?
So the shift towards physics first supports a lot of kids in algebra when algebra is the 9th grade math. And what they found is that it really only supports them in that 9th grade math for about half a year, because then the math quickly outstrips what the physics can support, gets into ideas and concepts that aren't part of the physics curriculum anymore. It could be done, it would help those kids. I think the route that we're going, it's a little bit of a slow burn, but it will do much more good than simply switching to a physics first and supporting kids in algebra. Because the kids I see in 9th grade algebra don't have the concepts from below. They've been, the drill and kill that Mr. Shells talked about in world language happens in math, right? The time speed, the speed tests. We've been asking for them to stop, don't do that anymore. And that's kind of the first step, but kind of hitting the brakes and adding the conceptual through physics in 9th grade is a stopgap, right? Kind of building it from pre-K all the way up through 8. I don't know that you need to do that. Does that answer your question? It's also hard to make that shift in a small district,
Yeah, that's what I.
you know, and the way science certifications work. You're either a biology teacher, chemistry teacher, physics teacher, or a science teacher. We would have to probably have people recertified if we're gonna make that shift. In most cases, biology people don't wanna be physics people, and physics people don't wanna be biology people, right? So that's a hard sell. You're welcome.
I just wanted to say, as our supervisor presentation over. Are you guys still going?
I forgot to say one thing.
No. Next time.
Seriously?
Seriously?
I'll make it quick.
Yes.
Nope. I wouldn't believe you.
Oh, he's coming.
No, thank you. I was being serious. I cannot speak highly enough about how intrigued I am in the lesson study approach Charlie and Glenn are doing in math, and I can't wait to try to replicate that in the humanities. 2 quick quotes that are on my mind from, I don't know where I read it, but I know it's the antithesis of what they are working to accomplish. Isolation is the enemy of improvement. We just can't get better working in isolation, or it's exceedingly hard to do. And we don't want our teachers to be a collection of independent contractors who merely share a parking lot. You know, it can be very inviting sometimes. I'm going to shut my door and teach and close myself off, but it's through talking about practice with other practitioners. Isn't that what lawyers do? Isn't that what doctors do? If you've ever had a friend go to med school, sure, they learned in med school, but most would probably tell you, I learned in hospitals. Because it was a teaching hospital where established doctors worked with interns and med students and younger doctors, and they did case studies and they talked about practice. And it's literally that kind of concept that we're borrowing and bringing into schools, where we hope to hire these excellent outside trainers. We all learn from the same trainer, and now someone is brave enough to just try a new best practice strategy. And this is the important part, because it could stop there. That would just be a pure observation. We then retreat to a conference room and we have a dialogue about practice in a non-threatening, non-evaluative, non-judgmental, collegial and supportive way. And when I spoke before about how best to improve things inside of the school, I really think that they're on to something, and it's very progressive. You know, I've worked in 2 other districts that were fairly high achieving. They were top 50 districts. They were nowhere near doing that. So I just wanted to say that, and it's something I hope to get up and running with the trainers also. Thank you for listening.
I just want to add, I want to just thank you for the presentation for the supervisors. You know, I'm always amazed, you know, how you guys work with the teachers and work with the principals and collaborate to, you know, provide that curriculum for our students that continues to grow and expand and thinking out of the box. And I was just thinking of field trips that, you know, Anderson Cooper and all the things you're doing with the math program and computer science and special ed. Just those things are amazing. And I always just wanted to say that, you know, what you all do each and every day is why we're getting recognized as an amazing school district, along with Dr. Dionisio and the rest of the staff. And again, you guys are a key driver to, you know, how to push our district forward in the curriculum world. Thanks for what you do. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you very much. I think you guys have covered it all. Done a tremendous job.
That's why I'm happy I'm on the
Glenn, do you want to come back up? Do you want to?
Do we ever have like everybody's the gong show? I think we need a gong. Ready to go? Like, okay. Done.
Yeah,
No.
it's fascinating, and then it's crazy because when you ask your kid, would you
several more hours. And this only scratches the surface of what all of you are doing with your departments and across departments with special education. So there's so much that goes into teaching and learning, and it's so complex, and there's no script as to how to go about doing it and developing the best possible program, except for the one thing that rings true every single time is that collaboration. I think you all hit on that today, and I think that that's the strength of our school community and why we're operating at such a high level, and kids benefit. And kids benefit and our teachers benefit, and it's a great place to learn, and it's a great place to teach. So kudos to all of you for supporting our teachers and the wonderful work that you do each and every day. We couldn't do it without you and your leadership and your vision, and kudos on the job well done.
Yeah.
And Mr. Sheldon, I'm not going to allow you to say another thing. Because I'm seeing it on the tip of your tongue. But you can see me tomorrow morning.
Wow. Very good.
We're good. We still have to get to the superintendent report.
Yeah, that's.
our meeting.
Mr. Moriello isn't speaking tonight, you're just here for support. Got it. So then we're gonna move on now to the superintendent's report.
This will be the fastest one you've ever heard, Mr. Elliott. I just want to bring people's attention to resolution number 6.2 tonight, along with the wonderful work that our supervisors, our directors, our administrators, our teachers do in order to make learning so special. We could not do it without the community support, and it seems like every single board meeting we have another resolution on to accept financial support, which is incredible. And tonight we have 3 grants there by VFE, one for the design club printer, one for flexible seating in the middle school, and another one at the middle school for science. So thank you, VFE, for all of their unending support. Our professional development day on June 6th, I will not go into the level of detail on what all of those topics were, but I can tell you that it was a very rich, robust day, a lot of, once again, collaboration and sharing and networking with our teachers and our administrators, and it was highly, highly successful. And last but not least, naturally the end of the school year. It's been a very, very successful, progressive school year, and we're very proud of how it's ending. We still have a few days left, and we do have the culminating, obviously, activities on June 20th. It begins at Caldwell University at 9 a.m. on Thursday, which is the HBW promotion ceremony of our 8th graders, advancing beyond 8th grade, and many of them will be coming to Verona High School. And naturally, in the evening at 6:30, we have our VHS commencement ceremony, also at Caldwell University. A wonderful venue where we're able to accommodate many people. We're no longer really limited to a certain set number of tickets for families. It's climate controlled. It's just a beautiful event. So we look forward to seeing everyone there, and that's the end of the superintendent report.
Excellent. Then we're gonna move on to Ms. Nardino and the business administrator report.
Okay. So one of the resolutions tonight is resolution number 12, it's the last resolution, is approving the financing of the Chromebooks and computers that we're purchasing. That purchase order actually went out, so we should be receiving about 700 Chromebooks, and I think 2 labs we're replacing, so we're on track to get that done this summer. I've been working on the year-end projection. June is a month, it's the only month where we have 3 pays because it's all contractual people get paid on the 15th, and then the last day of school, which is the 20th, and then any other vouchers that are kind of dribs and drabs come in on the 30th. So I'll have a better picture of where we're at in July, just because of all that. The utility bills won't be in until mid-July, but I'm hopeful we're going to be in a good place. The other thing I wanted to comment on, and I'm actually happy that Mr. Miller's in the room, is that I was at my business administrator conference and attended a seminar on sustainable New Jersey. So one of the things that's coming down the pike, and I don't know if you know this, but they are going to require that school districts have green policies, and then they also want us to work it into the curriculum. We had a green team meeting last week. Carol Thomas is putting some things together for an assembly in September. Lanning has already done one, so we're gonna try and piggyback that and pick a day that we can do the 3 other elementary schools. Changing the way we recycle, so really the big kickoff now is gonna be this September. We recycle, we don't really do it that well, because if you talk to some experts in the field, they would tell you that when the recycling gets to wherever it is that they now goes into the big containers or wherever, if they see something in the recycling that shouldn't be there, it's going off to a landfill. Yeah, well, the whole thing. It's going off to a landfill. So forget about everything that you did and you did right. There could be a couple of pieces, and Glenn, you're shaking his head, yes. They could see a couple of pieces in there and they reject it. They don't even want to, they don't want to accept it. No, no. So it's pretty, it's gotten very specific, and I've learned a lot too, because I recycle everything. Like, I'll recycle this. Not everything's recyclable.
No, not everything is.
No. So what I had, one of the capstone, does it say it?
Hard to tell.
Yeah. So what I had one of the capstone kids do that's in Mrs. Shakatano's class is to do a big poster so that we can post them in all the schools above the recycling containers. We're going to get new recycling containers. We're going to try and change the habits of the custodians and the teachers, because I think the custodians are just used to just pull the bag out and throw it out when oftentimes there's nothing even in there. So hopefully that'll save on plastic bags. But more to come on that. And I think that's all I have. Just those 3 things. Unless anybody has a question.
Any questions on that?
Is that because they took up all the time?
No.
You want to come?
So the committee reports, education and special education?
Education did meet. It was a relatively quick meeting, and the presentation will be, my recap will be even quicker, because virtually everything was covered by these 16 gentlemen here. But they talked a lot about the curriculum. We will be voting for approval on the new curriculum at the next meeting, the 25th. And additionally, the new calendar revisions will be updated in July by Mr. Miller. Special education, the CPAC, which are CPAC's child, the dates for 2019, 2020 have been picked. There was a preschool open house on June 4th. We received some updates on mediation, and that's always ongoing. And then the only unbudgeted item we have, that we did have an out-of-district move-in that's placed at out-of-district. So that's about a $72,000 unexpected expense.
When's that happen? July? September?
Just shaking his head, so let me hear.
Yeah. So when that happens, when somebody comes from another, you're saying they moved in, so do we reevaluate internally to see if this is a student that we would be able to service? Because our district might have a different approach than the district they're coming from.
Yes. So that process is always underway. So
Okay.
Mr. Morello gave the board an update on that, and that'll occur this year as well.
And is there any other questions on education? And then we'll move to, did athletics?
Yes, we met, yes. So just, I'll make a few brief things. We do have a field hockey coach. So we had one that decided not to come, or got another job, and then we had one that came and really well qualified. I don't think we're voting on the coach tonight, but I think we'll maybe next meeting.
Probably next meeting, I don't see how they do it.
We'll get the whole segment there. Mr. Merkley went through a whole list of spring sports. Baseball went to sectional finals, had a great season. Want to add about five?
Oh, yeah, so real quick, this past Saturday, 2 of the boys from the high school team, Kyle McCaffrey and Pierce Coppola, were selected to play in the New Jersey Quad County baseball tournament at Kean University, and they both got to pitch. and Kyle McCaffrey for the Essex County was the MVP of the game. So congratulations to both of those boys on being selected, and also Kyle.
Dan's been the play-by-play for the baseball all spring, so
Yeah,
very busy season, so. But also go down the list, softball won the sectional first title since 2005. I'm just doing a quick rundown. Girls lacrosse had a nice season. Boys lacrosse, first ever conference championship. Tennis had a good record, above 500 record, 13-11. Girls track and boys track both won the conference championships. And then the golf team won the second sectional final, I believe. So, the last thing about a field trip, the field trip already took place since we had our meeting, but French Club went, 36 students went to the United Nations headquarters, to put headquarters, so that was a very exciting trip, so that's all we have.
Any
Questions?
questions? No? Are there any discussion items for tonight? I don't
I'll
think
just
so.
add quickly, because I've been on my soapbox for a while now regarding pilot. Dr. Dionisio did meet with Metropolitan Township and their pilot consultant, and as expected, it was very unproductive. Basically, the township told us that they just can't afford to support us with their pilot revenue. So, but that's not the end of it. Conversations will be ongoing because we will force it to be ongoing. And I would have attended the meeting this evening, town council meeting this evening, had we not rescheduled this meeting for this evening, but I'll be at the next one, although that is the swearing in, so. The next one, their next public meeting I'll be at to rattle the cages as well.
Copeland.
They don't have any intention of wrapping up the pilot agreement before that meeting, do they?
Well, some have been approved. I mean, there's a number of them on their slate to vote on. I'm not sure where they are in the process on all those, but I certainly will find that out and some more details will go back to the board on that.
That's it. So then, let's move on to the resolutions.
Okay, I just have one correction on resolution number 12, approving the lease. That should be, instead of First Hope Bank, that should be US Bank Corp, Government Leasing and Finance. That was a copy and paste error.
Wait, it's not First Hope Bank?
No, it's US Bank Corp, Government Leasing and Finance. Resolved that the board approve resolutions number 1 through 12 and addendum resolution number 1.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Mr. Elliott, second by Mr. Day. Are there any?
I want to do I guess I want to say a shout out for number 4. I want to thank Mr. Miller for agreeing to be the maternity leave replacement at Brookdale.
Thank you, Mr.
So,
Miller.
I thought that was a very nice thing that you offered to do.
Yeah. And I want to acknowledge Ms. Maka. She's moving on, and when I was a paraprofessional, I worked in her classroom with her one-on-one for a couple of years, and I just saw firsthand the work she did. So it's I wish her well. I sent her a little email, but want to acknowledge the work that she's done.
Ms. Maka is a tremendous loss to the high school. Her presence here and the loss of that will be felt. Highly respected in the department with the students, with the staff. She had an opportunity to go back home to where she teaches and resides, and where she grew up, and she resides, and her family's there, so we wish her the best. Definitely a huge loss.
Quick question number 12, the lease for the Chromebooks. Is that a lease purchase or is that just a straight lease? We don't return those when they're done, do we?
No, we do not.
Yeah, that's right.
The purchase, the lease purchase, financing.
Okay, so we're going to call roll.
Mr. Aller?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Aye.
Mrs. Prisco?
Yes.
Mr. Elliott?
Aye.
Mrs. Fresky. I'm looking at all that in the way they're answering. Mrs. Fresky?
Oh, with a happy. That's what they say on safari. Oh, good.
Yes.
And
No.
oh my gosh.
Is that an affirmative?
They answer, they look at each
And
other.
a happy.
So then lastly, if there's any public comments, so Mr. Shells, if you have anything else to
Oh,
say. I'm opening it up.
Is this a Roche or a board meeting?
So,
Where you go, it's confidential.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Resolved that the board meet in private session from which the public shall be excluded to discuss the topics of negotiations and personnel or potential litigation which private discussion is being held pursuant to section 7B and 8 of the Open Public Meeting Act. The matters under discussion will be disclosed to the public as soon as final decisions are made and voted on. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So
Thank you, everybody.
Our next public meeting is Tuesday, June 25th, at 7 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Yeah.